Welcome back to the deep dive. We know you come here for more than just surface level information. You're here for that foundational truth that can really, well, that can really shift your perspective.
That's right. And today we are taking a very close look at one of the, I think, most powerful pieces of writing in the entire Old Testament.
It's short, but it is incredibly dense,
Yeah.
emotionally and theologically. We're talking about Psalm 13.
Exactly. We're going to set aside, the big, broad theological concepts for a moment and focus intensely on this one single six-verse prayer.
Our mission today is a very detailed, teaching-focused exploration of Psalm 13, and we'll be using the language of the King James Version.
And our goal is to break it down, really, phrase by phrase. We want to reveal the profound spiritual truths and, I think most importantly, the actionable pattern for prayer that David gives us.
Right, a pattern for those moments when you feel completely and utterly overwhelmed.
And for this study, we're drawing on the insights and materials put together by the You Need Faith in Jesus team.
That context is so important because Psalm 13 is what's known as a Davidic lament. And these laments, they aren't just, pretty sad poems.
Not at all. They are the sound of a human being who is being brutally honest with God.
Utterly honest. David doesn't try to wrap his feelings in pious language. He just pours out his genuine frustration, his pain, and frankly, his fear of being abandoned. It's all right there.
And the very honesty is what makes this a timeless model for us. It captures that whole terrifying range of human despair, but it also provides a map out of it.
A map out, I like that.
It really is. It shows us how to start from that absolute lowest point, that feeling of being forgotten by God, and how to intentionally, how to pivot that entire conversation towards confident praise.
And to trust in God's character even when everything around us is just chaos.
That's the core of it.
Okay, so let's start that journey. The psalm begins in a very, very dark place. We're diving straight into section 1, the deepest despair. David unleashes this through what we call the Fourfold Cry, which you'll find right in the first 2 verses of Psalm 13.
And when you read this opening, it's not a gentle start. There's no preamble. It is an immediate, anguished confrontation.
A confrontation with his creator.
It's the sound of a spirit in absolute crisis. He bypasses all the small talk and goes right to the core fear of, of anyone who's ever tried to walk faithfully with God.
Let's read those first 2 verses in full, just to absorb the intensity of the language.
Okay, Psalm chapter 13, verse 1. How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord, forever? How long wilt thou hide thy face from me?
And verse 2 continues, How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long shall mine enemy be exalted over me?
Wow. Even just reading it, you feel the weight.
You really do. And the first thing that strikes me is the structure. David doesn't just ask how long once.
No.
He asks it 4 separate times in just those 2 verses. This isn't just someone looking for an answer on a timeline. It's a heavy rhetorical groan.
Yes, a groan. It signals not just a difficult moment, but a prolonged, agonizing trial.
The repetition really is the point, isn't it?
It is entirely the point. It's a classic Hebrew literary device. Repeating that phrase 4 times emphasizes the sheer duration and the depth of his anguish. This isn't a snapshot of a bad day.
No, this is chronic suffering. It's a season of trial that has gone on for so long that David feels completely trapped inside of it.
It communicates this intense weariness, a spiritual exhaustion that has just become his daily reality.
And look at the content of that very first question. It's explosive. How long wilt thou forget me, O Lord, forever?
For a person of faith, that is the ultimate existential crisis. It's the worst possible pain.
Explain that. Why is being forgotten so devastating here?
Well, think about who he's talking to. He uses the name Yahweh here, O Lord. This is the covenant name of God.
This is the personal God.
The personal covenant-keeping God. The God who knit him together, who promised him an everlasting kingdom, who knows him intimately. To feel forgotten by that God. It's like the entire foundation of your existence has just crumbled beneath you.
And you can feel the desperation in that quick follow-up question he asks himself. Forever.
Right. He's asking, is this silence from you just temporary? Or is this it? Is this my new permanent reality?
It shows the suffering has moved past just being about his circumstances. It's become this terrifying spiritual void.
He fears the relationship itself, the one thing that sustains him, might be permanently broken.
And this fear of abandonment is then immediately clarified by the second cry, which is, How long wilt thou hide thy face from me?
This is the specific spiritual consequence of feeling forgotten. It's a very specific image.
And in the ancient world, what did that mean exactly for God to hide his face? because that sounds much worse than just being ignored.
Oh, it was devastating. Because it implied a complete reversal of favor. In Hebrew culture and thought, God's face shining upon you meant direct blessing, protection, intimate presence.
Like in the priestly blessing.
Precisely. The Aaronic blessing speaks of this. So when God hides his face, it signifies the direct withdrawal of his watchful eye, his manifest favor, his felt presence.
So you're exposed.
Completely exposed. Without God's presence, the believer is vulnerable to their enemies, they're dishonored among their people, and they feel utterly unsupported. The fear here isn't just physical death, it's a kind of spiritual exposure and abandonment.
Okay, so those first two, how long, questions are vertical. They're aimed directly at this perceived breakdown in the divine relationship.
Correct.
But the next two, they shift dramatically. Let's look at the internal torture he describes in verse 2. How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily?
This is where David moves from theological despair to psychological torment. And this is so profoundly relatable for us today.
It really is. He's trapped in his own internal echo chamber.
That's a perfect way to put it. To take counsel in my soul means he's doing exactly what we all do when we're under immense stress. He's ruminating.
He's just turning it over and over.
The problem, the perceived failures, the fear, the doubt, the humiliation, it's an endless cyclical loop in his own mind.
He's trying to think his way out of the despair, but it's just not working.
It's actively making it worse. He's self-counseling in a closed loop. And the key detail is the result of that loop. It only produces sorrow in my heart daily.
Not just sorrow, but daily sorrow.
Yes. The endless analysis, it doesn't lead to a solution. It doesn't lead to peace. It only deepens the constant, profound sorrow. His own internal world, when it's left unchecked, becomes a primary source of his agony.
He's realizing his own thoughts are part of the problem.
He is. He can't fix the external enemy. He can't fix the spiritual distance he feels from God. And here he realizes he can't even fix his own mind.
That is such a powerful moment of self-awareness. He's basically admitting that he's suffering from this mental and emotional exhaustion caused by his own constant worry.
And recognizing that is crucial. So many times, the deepest part of a spiritual crisis isn't just what God is or isn't doing, or what an enemy is doing.
It's what we're doing to ourselves.
It's what we are doing to ourselves internally. And David puts this question, his own rumination, on the same level of existential dread as God hiding his face. That tells you how devastating it is to let anxiety and sorrow become your daily advisors.
Okay, so we have the vertical complaints about God, the internal complaint about himself, and then David adds the final piece, the external element. How long shall mine enemy be exalted over me?
And this completes what you could call the perfect storm of suffering. The psychological torment he's feeling is amplified by a very real, very active external threat.
The enemy's victory isn't just a personal defeat.
No, it's a dual defeat. It's personal because he's physically suffering, but it's also spiritual because his enemy seems to be winning and is celebrating that victory publicly.
And when the Psalms talk about an enemy, who are we typically talking about?
Well, often the enemy is characterized by pride, by arrogance, and by a kind of practical atheism. It's the person who believes they're succeeding because they're stronger than God, or maybe because God simply doesn't exist or doesn't care.
So when that person is exalted, it looks like proof to the world that David's faith is foolish.
Exactly. It seems to validate their worldview. And that's why the pressure on David is so immense. It becomes a matter of public witness.
The enemy doesn't just win a battle.
They use that victory to mock David's God. The enemy's success adds this tremendous weight to David's spiritual sorrow. He knows that the wicked man sees his downfall as proof that God isn't intervening, which just makes the spiritual pain even sharper.
I think we need to pause here on the practical application because the source material makes a really important point that this raw, brutal honesty from David, it's actually an act of faith.
It is, and it seems counterintuitive, but it's the highest form of faith.
How so? It sounds like complaining.
Because disbelief drives you away from God. You just give up. But lament, true biblical lament, drives you to God. David is modeling a faith that is mature enough and honest enough to express this profound frustration and deep hurt.
But he's still aiming it all at the throne.
He is. He's trusting that God is big enough and merciful enough to handle his pain and his questions without striking him down for it.
He's not putting on a brave face. He's not pretending everything is fine for the sake of piety.
No, he's demanding an answer from the one person he still believes can answer.
That reframes this whole experience for us as listeners. If you're struggling with guilt because you feel angry or, too honest in your prayers,
David shows us the way.
the practical takeaway here is permission. You have permission from Scripture to be completely, brutally honest with God.
Pour out your heart. Ask your own intense, repeated, how long questions.
Mhm.
This is what mature faith looks like. It's not the absence of doubt. It's taking your doubts to the right place.
It's like releasing a spiritual pressure valve, but making sure you direct the steam toward the Creator where it can actually be handled.
Precisely.
Okay, so David has poured out this intense fourfold complaint. He's covered the vertical abandonment, the internal torment, and the external defeat. Now he has to move from just lamenting the problem to actually pursuing a solution.
And this brings us to section 2, petition for revival and reputation. This is in Psalm chapter 13, verses 3 and 4.
The shift from complaint to petition.
Yes, lamentation is important, it's necessary, but it's not the final destination. True biblical lament always transitions into petition. David moves from just expressing his distress to making these urgent, focused requests. He knows his life literally depends on God's response.
Let's look at that shift in tone in verse 3. It says, "Consider and hear me, O Lord my God. Lighten mine eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death."
You hear it right away. It's a direct command and appeal. The questions are over. Now he's demanding action.
Consider and hear me.
He's calling on God to stop hiding his face and to actively look at his situation, to listen to his prayer, and to act decisively. And notice the way he addresses God here.
He changes it.
He shifts from the majestic, O Lord, Yahweh, to the very personal, O Lord, my God. He's invoking that personal covenant relationship as the very basis for his plea.
And the urgency of his request really centers on this one phrase that carries so much weight. Lighten mine eyes. We need to dig into this. What does it actually mean to have your eyes lightened?
This is a profoundly expressive Hebrew idiom. It's so much deeper than just, cheer me up. To lighten the eyes is synonymous with receiving renewed life, vitality, and spiritual strength.
So it's a physical thing almost.
It has a physical dimension. Think of it metaphorically. When someone is desperately ill or in deep shock, their eyes become dull and heavy, the light sort of goes out of them. David is so physically and emotionally drained from this ceaseless sorrow that he feels the life is literally draining out of him.
We see this metaphor elsewhere in Scripture, don't we? To describe a return of strength after exhaustion.
We do. A perfect example is in 1 Samuel chapter 14. Saul's son Jonathan is exhausted from battle and he eats some honey. The text in verse 27 says his eyes were enlightened.
It was an immediate physical revival.
An immediate, life-giving restoration. And that's what David is praying for here. That same instantaneous infusion of energy from God. A fresh dose of hope, of spiritual light, and of physical stamina. He's asking for an emergency supply of grace to just keep him going.
And the request is so urgent because he links the dullness of his eyes directly to the grave, lest I sleep the sleep of death.
He's not just being poetic here, saying he feels a bit down. He is saying, I am so mentally and spiritually exhausted by this sorrow that I am physically failing.
The sleep of death.
It's often synonymous with Sheol, the grave. David feels he is right on the brink. His faith, his physical endurance, his hope, it's all giving out. This is an urgent plea for survival. It's like asking for a spiritual defibrillator charge from God when a total collapse is imminent.
So this is a prayer for revival when you've hit absolute zero, when your own capacity to endure has completely failed.
Yes. He's recognizing his human limitation. He's saying, I've done all I can. I've taken counsel in my own soul, and it led nowhere. Now only a supernatural act of divine intervention can restore my life and my hope. The dependence is absolute.
And then David immediately elevates the stakes. It's not just about his personal survival anymore. Look at verse 4. Lest mine enemies say, I have prevailed against him, and those that trouble me rejoice when I am moved.
This is where David shows his incredible spiritual maturity, and it's such a vital lesson for our own prayer lives.
His motivation changes.
It does. His primary motivation for deliverance is no longer just his own personal comfort or survival. It becomes fundamentally about God's honor, God's reputation, his kavod, his weighty glory.
He understands that his personal trial has these huge spiritual implications for the bigger story.
Exactly. If David is defeated, if he collapses into that sleep of death, or if he is shaken, moved from his position of trust, the ultimate victor in the eyes of the watching world isn't just his human enemy.
It's the forces of disbelief they represent.
Right. His enemies will mock God's reputation. They'll see David's downfall as proof that the God of Israel is powerless, or unfaithful, or just unable to protect his own chosen servant.
And this principle is foundational all across the Old Testament, isn't it? That God often acts for the sake of his own name among the nations.
It's one of the driving forces behind divine intervention in Israel's history. You can think back to that defining example with Moses in Exodus chapter 32.
With the golden calf.
Yes, the Israelites commit this gross idolatry, and God is ready to just wipe them out. But Moses intercedes, and how does he do it? He appeals directly to God's reputation.
He says, basically, what will the Egyptians think?
That's it. In Exodus chapter 32, verse 12, Moses asks, "Wherefore should the Egyptians speak and say, for mischief did he bring them out to slay them in the mountains?" He's saying, if you destroy us now, Pharaoh and his people will mock you. They'll say your power wasn't enough or your motives were evil.
And David is using that same mature, high-stakes theological strategy here.
He is. He's essentially saying, Lord, if you don't save me, it will be a defamation of your own character. Please act now, not just because I'm suffering, but because your very name is on the line. He appeals to the one thing God is most zealous for, his own glory.
That's so profound. It gives us a template for prayer that moves beyond just our temporary discomfort and connects our need to God's eternal purposes.
And the practical application is so important. Our trials, they aren't always private. Our perseverance through hardship, when it's powered by God's intervention, becomes a powerful witness to a cynical world.
So when we pray for deliverance,
we should absolutely ask God to step in so that our endurance and our ultimate victory will demonstrate his strength and his faithfulness to the unbelieving world around us. We ask him to answer so our failure won't give anyone a reason to mock the faithfulness of our Savior.
That reframes the purpose of suffering entirely. Okay, so David has moved from the chaos of his own mind to this confident public appeal based on God's honor. But he's still in a state of petition. The monumental shift is still to come.
It is.
And that brings us to section 3, the conscious choice, the pivot of faith. This is all housed in a single verse. Psalm chapter 13, verse 5. This is the heart of the whole psalm.
This really is the definitive moment of transformation. It's the psychological and spiritual hinge on which the entire narrative turns from despair to triumph. If you want a roadmap for shifting from anxiety to assurance, this is it.
Let's read that incredible dramatic statement in the first part of verse 5. But I have trusted in thy mercy. My heart shall rejoice in thy salvation.
We have to stop right there. On that one, single small word, but.
But.
That is the most important conjunction in the entire psalm. It signals a complete and deliberate change in direction. It acts like a full spiritual stop sign. David chooses right there to halt the stream of despair, all those how long questions, and turn his entire attention 180 degrees.
And the tension is, outwardly, nothing has changed.
Nothing. His enemies are still exalted. He still feels exhausted. The answers he asked for haven't arrived yet.
And yet, he makes this choice that completely reverses his inner state.
And that is the definition of mature faith. He makes a conscious, deliberate decision to pivot away from the overwhelming, shifting, unreliable feelings of despair that dominated the start of the psalm.
And instead, he focuses on the unshakable, unchanging character of God.
The objective facts of his pain are still there, but the subjective foundation of his confidence shifts instantly. This is the very essence of living by faith and not by sight.
And he focuses his trust on a very specific aspect of God's character. He says, I have trusted in thy mercy. That word mercy is so much richer than how we use it today.
It is. We have to dive deep here. This is the Hebrew word hesed.
Hesed.
Hesed. It's one of the most significant theological concepts in the Old Testament, and David chooses it for a very specific reason. We translate it as mercy or loving kindness, but it signifies something far more robust than just pity.
So it's not just God feeling sorry for him.
Not at all. Hesed is God's loyal, steadfast, covenant-keeping love. It's the faithfulness of God that, in a way, obligates him to stand by his promises and uphold his commitment to his people, no matter what their current situation is.
So it's not a transactional love. It's not, I'll be nice to you because you're sad.
No. It is rooted in covenant. It says, I, the Lord, made a promise to you, David, and because of my own integrity and my own loyalty, I will fulfill that promise. When David anchors his hope in Hesed, he's anchoring himself not in what he can see, not in how he feels.
Not even in his own past performance.
Not at all. He anchors himself solely in God's reliability, his commitment to the relationship. And that's why his trust can become unshakable. It's based on the giver's character, not the recipient's merit.
And this intentional choice to focus on covenant reliability even when there's no evidence, the source material calls that an expression of pure faith.
It's pure faith. It is choosing to believe the known truth about God's goodness, the reality that God is faithful, over the temporary, chaotic reality of his own emotions. It's an act of the will. It's a spiritual discipline. You have to command your soul to believe the truth about his set.
And that intentional trust leads immediately to an intentional commitment. The next line, my heart shall rejoice in thy salvation.
The verb tense there is the key to the whole victory. The definite future tense, shall rejoice.
He's not saying I'll rejoice when my problems are gone.
No, he is saying, I will rejoice because I have already made the decision to trust in your Hesed, and therefore I know with certainty that your salvation will come. It's a determined act of the will, an intentional commitment to joy even before that salvation is visible.
He's singing in faith. He's not waiting for the end of the trial to start singing.
Precisely. And his joy is rooted in God's Yeshua, his salvation, his ultimate deliverance. David's joy is based on the reliability of God to deliver, not the timing of that delivery.
And this intentional choice to command joy, it just aligns so perfectly with what we see commanded in the New Testament.
It connects beautifully. You see this exact same principle with the Apostle Paul. Paul, writing from a Roman prison in circumstances that were just as dire as David's, declares in Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice.
His joy wasn't based on his circumstances.
Not at all. He was incarcerated. He was facing martyrdom. But his confidence was rooted solely in the unchanging reality of God. He was forcing his heart to follow the truth rather than the facts of his situation.
That parallel is stunning. Both men, facing their own version of the sleep of death, use this choice of faith to preempt their anxiety.
And that is the practical application for us right out of verse 5. The pattern to move from despair to hope involves this willful choice. You start with honest lament, but then you must consciously make that pivot, the but, and then command your heart to rejoice based on the truth of God's Hesed.
And that powerful pivot sets the stage for the final celebratory declaration of the psalm. This brings us to section 4, triumph, worship, and assurance, all found in Psalm chapter 13, verse 6.
It's the complete reversal. The end of the song is a mirror image of the beginning, but the tone is completely flipped.
Having wrestled with God, commanded his soul to trust, and anchored himself in Hesed.
He naturally and immediately explodes into worship. The struggle is over. And it's not because his circumstances have changed, but because the foundation of his heart has changed.
Let's read that first line of verse 6. I will sing unto the Lord because he hath dealt bountifully with me.
And that resolve to sing is the direct, necessary consequence of the trust he just declared in verse 5. This shows us the true scriptural order.
Worship follows faith.
Worship follows the choice of faith. It's not worship that somehow initiates faith. It's faith, that act of trusting in Hesed that initiates genuine, heartfelt worship. David is now celebrating in advance of the victory.
He's not singing after the battle's over. He's singing during the trial, simply because he is now certain of his relationship with a faithful God. His focus is completely off his temporary problem and fixed firmly on the permanence of God's character.
He's realized his relationship with Yahweh is secure no matter what his enemy is doing.
And that security demands a song. The very thing he lacked at the beginning, joy and light, is now restored and expressed as worship.
And then David grounds his current worship in his history with God. This is what solidifies his hope for the future, the last line. Because he hath dealt bountifully with me.
This is the anchor. That phrase, dealt bountifully, is not a throwaway line. It is the foundation.
He's looking back.
He's looking back and taking inventory. The term refers to God's generous, abundant, overwhelmingly gracious goodness throughout his entire life. He's performing a purposeful act of recollection to break the cycle of his current despair.
Because despair has a short memory, right? It only focuses on the immediate pain. Exactly. But faith requires a long memory. It requires us to recall the great deeds of God. David is essentially saying, my feelings right now might be screaming abandonment, but my history with God shouts fidelity.
If God provided for me before,
he is obligated by his own Hesed to provide now. The principle is non-negotiable for David. If God was faithful in the past, he is faithful right now, and he will be faithful in the future.
And for us today, listening to this under the new covenant, the scope of God's bountiful dealing has been infinitely magnified, hasn't it?
Infinitely.
What is the ultimate non-negotiable proof for us that God has dealt bountifully, superseding even David's experiences?
For every modern believer, the cross of Jesus Christ is that ultimate proof. He did not withhold his own son. If God provided the ultimate deliverance, salvation from sin, from separation, from eternal death, then we can be absolutely confident that he will provide the lesser deliverances we need every day.
Strength, hope, endurance.
All of it. Our confidence in future deliverance is solidified by remembering the ultimate deliverance we've already secured through Christ. That is the final unshakable assurance.
That really brings the stunning journey of Psalm 13 to its conclusion. It's a complete six-verse theological map for survival and victory in prayer.
It really is the divine pattern for prayer when you're in distress. The You Need Faith in Jesus team articulates it as a movement, right? From the chaos of the mind and the fear of abandonment in verses 1 and 2.
To the urgent petition based on God's honor in verses 3 and 4.
Then to that powerful conscious choice to trust, the but, and the focus on Hesed in verse 5. And then finally, to triumphant, grounded praise based on past faithfulness in verse 6.
It's an incredible density of truth packed into just 6 verses. We've gone through the fourfold cry, the meaning of Lighten Mine Eyes, the spiritual stakes of God's reputation, the profound meaning of Hesed, and that determined choice to rejoice.
And to summarize the core takeaway, remember that you have permission to be brutally honest with God about your pain, to ask how long when you feel forgotten. But the true spiritual power comes with that pivotal declaration.
But I have trusted.
The moment you state, "But I have trusted in thy mercy," and anchor your overwhelming, confusing feelings in the unchanging reality of God's loyal, covenant-keeping love. That's the turning point.
We saw David request that God lighten mine eyes to save him from exhaustion and despair, that spiritual sleep of death. So considering the ultimate salvation we have in Christ, where death itself is defeated, what sleep of death, what specific, crushing daily despair, relentless exhaustion, or fear are you currently carrying that you need to consciously hand over to God's keeping right now, and thereby actively choose to rejoice in thy salvation even before the storm passes?
A powerful question to end on. Make that pivot.
And again, this detailed teaching deep dive into Psalm 13 was presented by the You Need Faith in Jesus team, providing resources to help you find foundational faith in Jesus.
And to really solidify your understanding of this profound lesson, be sure to use the flashcards to review key terms like Hesed and the Fourfold Cry, and then take the quiz. Passing the quiz will mark this lesson as complete.